It's BMW's 100th anniversary this year, and they've made some very good cars over the years. We're going to talk about our favorite BMWs, and we want to know what yours are. But that's today on After Drive. Come back and watch 100 years of the best BMWs. See you in a minute. So BMW 100 years this year. It's pretty amazing. 1916, they were making airplane engines. Then they went into cars, bicycles, motorcycles. Had some trouble along the way, financial ups and downs as independent car companies do. The Quant family held tight to the reins.
Yeah.
And here we are in 2016 at 100 years for BMW.
100 years.
100 years. It's kind of amazing, but when BMW really found its stride was in the 60s with the 2002 and the new sixes, the big mid-size cars that would then set the pick for all the cars they would build up to the modern day, not including the SUVs that have done very well for them too. So BMW in America, to us, people of our age, people even older, maybe a little bit younger, means performance. It means the 2002 was the car that really solidified BMW in America. Very sporty little sedan, kind of made that, did what Alpha couldn't do in America, which was be reliable and sporty and
Start
small.
up.
So, and made a massive splash in America, and here we are today with all those cars.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about our favorite BMWs. It's going to be kind of a fairly quick show, but
Sure.
with us, we'll probably talk too much anyway. But I want to know what your favorite BMWs are. Are they from, the 50s, maybe the 507? Those are doing really well in the collector market.
They only made like 235 of those.
They were,
or something.
yeah, exactly.
They were a catastrophic car on the P&L at the time.
Exactly.
They were like, it'll cost this much to build it, and then it turned out to be a lot more than that.
It could be a lot more. But of course, if you held on to them, now they're worth tons. Mm-hmm. And then, or is your favorite era the 60s or the 70s when they were winning Daytona and GT car racing in America, IMSA Camel GT racing?
Right.
Or is it the 80s with the Yuppies and some of the greatest racing, maybe the touring cars of the 80s or the 90s, and then 2000s with the M, the kind of when M really came into its own as a technological performance powerhouse.
I'm a huge BMW fan, tremendous BMW fan.
I can see by your shirt.
I accessorized today. Yeah. The first car I bought for myself, first new car, was a 3 Series manual. 325, I think, when I was young.
Wow.
And I chased it with a manual 5 Series. I really enjoyed driving BMWs. On our last show, it was my daily driver, E39 M5, and I'll still say it's one of the best sports sedans ever. In fact, I'm going to say it's the best. Cadillac, we gotta get into some brand new Cadillacs to really give you a good comparison.
The new Cadillacs are good, but they are excellent. But that E39 just marks the purest experience.
Lack of electronics makes it a special sort of a thing.
And they won't make it like that again. There will be things that'll be as good or arguably better, but if you want that pure big sports sedan with a manual gearbox.
But that's not my pick.
So that's not your pick. So these are our picks of our favorite BMWs. I think the ones that we think are sort of the most indicative of BMW performance over the years.
All right,
so who's going
as
first?
tradition goes, why don't you start us off?
So my pick is a little obvious, but I picked it for non-obvious reasons. I picked E30 M3. And not because I'm a fanboy who has it on multiple shirts, which I do and I am. I never drove a 507. They look lovely. My favorite all-time driving BMW is Z4 M Coupe, but I don't think it was the best one. It's just my sort of favorite one. But and then I thought E9 3-liter CSLs are the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and Batmobile trim, like that's a heart-stopping sort of a thing. But I picked the E30 because that was the first M series BMW. It's a fact and not a debate that the M3 is one of the greatest automotive platforms ever. It's always best car of the year or top 10 car of the year. And the E30 was the first one. And for me, that was one of the cars that was like a gateway to allowing drivers enjoy the art of driving. So like certainly I love cars, but what I love about cars is that they let me drive them. I'm much more of sort of a driver point of view than I am a collector point of view, or like I'm going to get this 911 and keep it in the garage. Like I had a beautiful vintage 911 and I took it to the track all the time because that's what I like. And I just feel like the E30 was one of those cars. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive, but it was sort of a mass-produced, track-ready daily driver sports car.
Well, you guys got one.
We've had a few of
Well, the white one, the one with the cage in it. That's the one I've driven.
That's a gnarly little car.
That's a gnarly little car. But you guys got that before the big boom hit on those. Before all of a sudden they were appreciating from. I mean, they were in the. They were $8,000 for 20 years, and then all of a sudden they were 25, and then they were 45. I was like, what the hell happened?
I was looking at some of them prior to the show. There's one on eBay for like $120,000.
Oh God!
It has like 30,000 original miles and all, but whatever. We're in this moment where all these cars are going really crazy, and it's but people blame it on the millennials. I don't know. I blame it on it being a great car.
I think they're blaming it on Gen X, by the way, because we're
we
were Gen X, and we're sort of hitting that. I mean, peak earning years. I don't know when that's going to happen, but sort of.
I'm planning in 3 years from now.
People across, you can see Wall Street from here. Gen Xers on Wall Street are, they were car guys, and they're buying the cars that either, sort of got them excited at, the age when they were forming their kind of automotive enthusiasm.
When we were kids, there was that poster, decisions.
Right. Or it was, justification for higher education.
Yeah,
like,
the garage.
The 928, the 308, like
and all those
Lamborghinis.
guys went to Wall Street and now they're buying E30 M3s.
And now they're all out buying up those great E30 M3s. But if you take all that away, I mean, the greatest thing about the E30 M3 is, there are two things for me, is that it's probably the most well-balanced car of that era.
Yeah.
Where no matter what you do to it, it handles in a way that like is completely predictable.
Really small inputs have a noticeable effect instantly.
Yeah.
Like just, and the most recent one that we have that with the cage and all is a bit stiffer. It's a bit track ready, but it just, you give it a little bit of steering input and it gets up on the shoulder and you could really dial it in. They're not the fastest things. You sort of get them up in the revs and they start
But that's
going.
a really special engine.
That
though.
is
it's a
special.
thoroughbred race motor,
And it's also, the E30 is the most winningest
most road car in history.
Yeah.
Right?
That's amazing.
It was like
won a race on average every day for 4 years.
Yeah.
But
I enjoy driving that car. I think that it made a lot of people enjoy the sport of driving, and they built a really great one, and it won more than anything, and it sort of kicked off a whole generation of one of the greatest sports cars ever made.
Well, and just to cap that off is that it was a homologation car, which was, for that era, cars that were built because racing series, the racing organizers required car makers to build a certain number of cars. Mm-hmm. That caused so much cool shit to happen, and that was one of the major cool events of homologation.
Yeah, true. What'd you pick?
Good choice. Well, I'm a classic car guy.
I know exactly what he picked.
I think I knew too.
And I'm nostalgic, and I happen to own one of these, or I think three of them.
Three of them. You own three of them.
It's going to become
various
one.
stages.
There will be one at one point.
I grew up driving my clapped out Volvos and aspiring to own a BMW 2002. So I've wanted one as long as I've had a driver's license. I finally have one. We have a very hop top one, the M2, which is cheating, but it's sort of
M2 is cheating, but it's a really cool looking car.
Yeah, but it accurately captures the spirit of the moment of that car.
Well, explain what that is, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
So an M2 is a BMW 2002 with the motor from his pick, the E30 M3. And then you have to do a lot of suspension work to make it all.
Yeah,
cope
you do
with it.
suspension work,
Yeah,
you
you
flare it
can-
out, Alpina
yeah.
race wheels, Borla exhaust, Sparco seats.
Yeah.
There's
But-
there's like two kinds of 2002s in my mind. There's the kind that like an English professor drives, and then there's Zach's. So Zach pulls up next to the English driver, it's like blah, 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 blah.
Right. So the 2002 is an obvious choice for me because I've had such a long desire for one, and it's very nostalgic. There's definitely other ones in that era, and again, I'm a classic car guy. So 3.0 CS, obviously a beautiful car.
Beautiful car, man.
And what I've learned about more recently that I still, honestly, I'm going to sound really ignorant because I don't know much about it, but the 3200 CS, like early 60s, it was on the heels of the 507, and it had a bit of the design cues, but it was a coupe. And if you look at that car, you can see a little bit of ISO Revolta in there.
Yeah,
you can
it looks
see some
Italian.
of the 3.0 CS roof line, and then the 507 in the front. I have no idea what the story is. I have no idea how collectible are. They had a V8 in them. It's pretty cool. So, you know, someday I'll find a rusted out chassis, one of those, and I'll put the Z4M coupe, you know, drivetrain in.
Well, all of those. Well, if you can find one. All of those cars, though, I mean, are like the 507 and that are way up there now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they just didn't make that many. You know, BMW was not in really good financial health in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
The Quant family was kind of consolidating their power that they would eventually wield for the rest of the company's life. But at that point, there was some trouble.
Really quick about the 507, the Z8. We've had some Z8s, one or two.
You know, that was going to be my pick, but I didn't.
It's a really nice car to drive. Really nice car to drive.
And,
you know why?
and underrated. You know, they a lot of people panned it, and it was a lot to do with the tires. It was the first generation run flats.
Yeah.
They destroyed the ride of the car. Put some good tires on there, and it's actually a great drive.
It's like Germany's answer to Shelby Cobra.
Yeah.
It's really grunty. It has the V8 in it, the same as
it's
in
basically an E39 M5 under there somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot lighter,
with
and
but a lot lighter,
no nannies.
And it's not a nimble sports car, but it's not a bad handling car. It's just a different experience. It's sort of like a real man's V8 convertible. You know, big steering wheel, grunty V8.
Yeah.
You know what's cool about that car is that if you bought one when it was new, it was probably 100 grand maybe around.
Right, it was
there.
about 125,000.
It's never depreciated.
No.
Yeah.
It's never had a moment where it dipped, and maybe during broader economic crisis.
Not even really.
But right now they're in the twos.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
never been
had
below-
one that it was a gray market car. We put 100,000 miles on it over 8 years, and we basically sold it for what we bought it for.
Wow.
That's how much they appreciated.
Neat little thing about that car, the directionals are all neon lights, which when they go bad is a real pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But they look great. Just
They look cool.
Little tube.
We really have to do a show about cars like the Z8 that don't depreciate. I mean, just like cars that are just insane.
The Warren
If you bought
Buffett
them-
blue chip
Right,
cars.
the blue chip cars that never went down.
BMW's
If we
got a
started
couple,
an
the
investment
one-
page that was just about cars, which is not my thing, by the way. I buy
like a
cars to
fantasy
drive them.
investment page. That's
But
not
if we
bad.
did that and people subscribe, $5.99 a month.
All right, so I just picked one. It's hard to pick just one, right? But I figured we would cap this off with the one car that I remember where I was the first time I saw one. That's how much of an impression it made.
The GT?
No,
Hate that car.
it's,
Which one?
It's the clown shoe.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The M Coupe, right?
Yeah.
So the 99 to 2002, whatever.
Yeah.
M Coupe.
Z3.
I remember where I was and when it was. I remember I was in my old Toyota pickup truck, and I was on the Cross Island Parkway, like right there, out there somewhere. I was going to the airport, and a guy pulled up,
Silver?
No, it was it was Oxford green.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that really
very
nice
90s color,
sweet. Yeah, but it was like a
very
forest
dark.
forest green. It was gorgeous.
pretty cool.
And I remember going, "What the fuck is that? What did they do to that thing?" Because I mean, don't forget the Z3 had been on, what was the Bond movie? It was Tomorrow Never Dies.
Which one
or
ever? Yeah, it's
whatever
when they had that BMW moment, the 7
right.
Series and
It
all
was
that.
one of the Pierce Brosnan ones.
Yeah.
So like 95, 96. So then this was like later on in the 90s, and all of a sudden this thing pops up. I was like, that's it. That's the one. And
It's like 10 times the coupe, the Roadster.
right. Yeah. It was, and I love that whole story. Now, when I was with Johnny Lieberman when Jalopnik was kind of brand new, and Johnny used to write this thing called. Johnny's now with Motor Trend now, just to ID him. Johnny used to do this thing called the Jalopnik Fantasy Garage. And he once said that the M Coupe was the most Jalopnik car ever. And the reason I think he said that is that it ticked all the boxes that made us want to even start Jalopnik back in the day. Was that it was a car that was started by rogue engineers doing something that they knew had to be done, but that the company necessarily bosses and the
Didn't see the value.
Yeah,
in
that
it.
they didn't subscribe to it, that the accountants didn't think there was a business model there.
Right.
So the engineers went out back, they took an M Roadster and they put this weird roof on it, right? And because, the problem with the M Roadster always was scuttle shake, you know what I mean? It was like, it didn't have the roof, it was turning
Twisty.
two different directions,
Yeah,
right?
chassis
They
gets you.
tried as much as they could to strengthen everything, but without adding too much weight. Yeah, you were still getting this. So they knew that platform was a great platform for a sports car. Put the roof on, got the rigidity, and made this car that all of a sudden became the one that the head of M used to drive home from the office every night.
A car that's
And they were
made just
animals,
purely
I mean-
for the love of driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, really lively cars. Bite your head off.
And
tail
seriously,
happy.
just ugly
Seriously.
enough.
Tail happy,
Just
but-
ugly enough. Like, it's
But
not
would
pretty.
but what sat down, like it had that moment where, like 911s, I guess too, but this was a little bit different because the weight setup was different. But it would just when you put the power on, it would just sit down and
I think there's something about that Z geometry where it has this unwieldy long nose, and
Yeah.
you are literally sitting on the rear axle. So you're like, I feel the axle in the seat of my pants. It's true.
It feels like
literally
the
feel
car literally rotates at your waist
Yeah.
when you're driving them. And it's a real, Caymans come close to that, but
Right.
Z-Series BMWs,
Yeah, that's
the
cool.
best seat of your
Yeah,
pants.
the Z4 carried that through pretty well too. I remember when Top Gear first reviewed one of the Z4 M Roadsters.
Yeah.
They had Richard Hammond going around, and they did a comparison against the obvious thing with the Cayman, and the Cayman's very tidy and nice. I'm a huge Cayman fan. And he's like, oh, this is perfect. The Cayman's absolutely perfect. Coming to the Z4, it was a little hard and unwieldy at first. Like, I don't know about this thing. And then like a few corners later, it was tail out, big plume of smoke. Like, oh, this thing's amazing. But
Right.
like, it's not an immediate thing, but when you kind of grab by the scruff of the neck, it's really, really good.
That's what makes it interesting,
It's
right?
made for a laugh.
Yeah, it's a car that you have to figure out. The whole thing is an enigma,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The design is an enigma, right? The handling is kind of an enigma, right? It's a car that is special, that you develop a bond with because of those things, not just a James Bond, like an actual. Sorry. But it also eventually had that great S54 motor out of the E46 BMW.
What are they
M3s.
trading for right now?
They're high, man. I mean, they haven't gone. I mean,
30s?
they're in the 30s. I mean, good one. There aren't that many of them. That's the problem. So I don't know. Maybe someday, hopefully in my peak earning years, I'll be able to get one of those because that's on the list for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great car.
Yeah.
Well, great choices, fellas.
Yeah, man.
I think they're all winners.
Yeah, I want to know what your choices are for best BMW of all time, or at least your favorite one, the one that kind of made you.
That's the
love
thing about
in
BMWs,
some
right?
way.
They're all pretty good.
Yeah.
They're all pretty
And
good.
you don't
Just-
have to, right? You don't have to love BMW
Yeah.
because a lot of people have other images of BMW, but like there
The
are
modern interpretation
modern
is,
interpretations. Like I guess, not to, the M2 is actually a really good car now, but it is a car that needs technology to make it feel like an analog sports car because it's not an analog sports car anymore.
Right.
But the technology is getting so developed that it actually is starting to go backwards. But if you really want just that pure mechanical experience, you can't beat an older one.
Yeah.
So
You have to give an honorable mention to the totally other end of the spectrum. One of the best experiences I had in a BMW was
i8?
Nope.
Okay.
A 7 Series diesel driving around
Oh.
Europe.
Oh, Germany.
If
Yeah,
you-
yeah.
they do cover a gamut, and it all fits within the description of the ultimate driver's machine. I mean, if you want to drive 150 miles an hour for 8 hours on the Autobahn,
Yeah.
big old tank of a 7 Series diesel was amazing. I mean, you just hit the cruise control at 150, and we're eating sandwiches and having a conversation. And
I'd go so far as to say you can't understand a 7 Series BMW until you drive it on the Autobahn, because
Yeah,
that's what
that's
it's
true.
made for.
Yeah.
We were hucking away at like 180 miles for a good 300-mile stretch, and it was just driving it with one finger. It's just planted.
that's what they're made for.
Made for it. Really made me appreciate that car when we were up there.
So thank you, BMW, for 100 years.
Thank you, yeah.
Let's get everyone's opinions, and we'll be in the comments and
Yeah,
throw it out there.
throwing it out there. Favorite BMW of all time, or the BMW that made you love BMWs? That's it for After Drive today from the Drive studio in Industry City in Brooklyn, New York, the home of the $12 breakfast sandwich. Yeah. I don't know, like, it's insane right now. Yeah. See you guys later.